Welcome to Digital Journal TV. I'm Chris Hogg. In this episode, we're taking a look at a device you likely use every day, a printer. More specifically, we're going to look at why ink costs so much and how you can make your prints look pro. Digital Journal sits down with Andrew Patrick at Epson to discuss a subject rarely explored. He tells you how ink is made and why you should care about the quality of the ink you use. Often these days you can go to a store and you can buy a cheap printer for less than it costs to replace ink. Why does ink cost so much?
Well, it's sort of the same system. We spend a lot of money in research and development at Epson. We have factories in the Far East that do nothing but spend money on developing new types of ink technology. It's very expensive, and in order to make the money back on the technology that we create, we need to, make a certain amount of money on it. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing. If you want the printer to be really, really expensive and then the ink to be not as expensive as it is, then people probably wouldn't buy the printer to begin with. When you compare the ink and the paper cost to getting in your car, going to a photo lab, giving them your memory card, getting them to make the prints, and then going back a week or whatever so later to pick the prints up. All those things considered, we feel it's a very economical, it's still an economical way to print, in fact, and a lot more, gives a lot more choice and freedom for the customer to do it when they want.
I've heard of cases where third-party inks will actually physically damage a printer. Are those true?
It can. The big problem comes when you mix different types of ink. That's the big problem, because some inks aren't compatible with each other, and if you've used, say, one kind of ink and then you put a different cartridge in of a third party, those two inks can mix together and create solids and clump and do things that can essentially make the head unusable.
What's involved in the actual production phase, from R&D to producing it to shipping it? What goes into making an ink?
It's not just a color that you drop on a piece of paper. There are things in the paper that need to be designed, and the ink has to be designed to properly mate with the thing, with the coatings on the paper, so that it sticks properly and it doesn't smudge, and it gives the finish that the customer is looking for. Also, the color and what makes the color is important. That has to be worked out, because certain colors don't last very long, as we found out. Certainly back in a few years ago, it wasn't unusual to have a print fade after just a couple of years and weeks if you left it in the sun. So these guys have to come up with the kind of colors that last a long time, that work well together to create a full package. There's other things like what the ink is going to sit in when it's in the cartridge, whether it's water or whether there's chemicals in there that, when the cartridge is used up, are they good for the environment? Can you throw it in the garbage? Do you need to take it to somewhere to be disposed of properly because there might be hazardous chemicals in there? All those kind of things.
What does Epson do differently than the competition? How are your inks different?
Well, our inks, first of all, are the way that we deliver the ink is different. We're the only company that makes a piezo inkjet head.
What does that mean?
That means that we use essentially it's a solid state quartz crystal to push the ink through the nozzle and onto the paper. The other inkjet companies use thermal technology, which physically heats the ink with a tiny little, it's kind of like a light bulb filament. It heats up, the ink boils and blows out through a hole, and that's how it goes onto the paper. Ours, we use a frequency that vibrates a quartz crystal, and the quartz vibrates and that fires the ink through the hole, and it's very accurate, first of all, because we can tweak that frequency to get different sized droplets, and we can make the kind of go where we want. So that, plus we don't boil the ink. The ink stays cold when it's firing through our print heads. It's hard to control what happens to the ink when it boils. It's like a kettle. I mean, it boils and it bubbles up, but it doesn't do it the same way every time. So it's very difficult to maintain really good consistency of ink laying down on paper if you really don't know where that droplet's going to go every time it fires out of the nozzle. As far as our ink goes, we've got a couple of different ink technologies that are revolutionary. We've got our new Claria ink, which is a dye-based ink. Has dark storage of over 200 years. It's smudge resistant and has brilliant color. And then we've got an UltraChrome pigment technology, which is a resin encapsulated pigment that we have in our professional products, which are, I think, still unmatched in the market right now.
You brought along some samples today that are stunning. Most people I've seen that use a printer fail to get that type of quality. The color's brilliant. Why is that? Why do these samples look so much better?
There's a lot of reasons why. Most people say, well, my printer doesn't print the way as good as your printer does, and that's a little bit of an inaccurate statement, because the printers all print exactly the same. The difference is how my computer is talking to my printer, or how my memory card is talking to the printer, how the images were saved on the memory card, for example, for my digital camera. There's several ways that you can set it up. It's easier to get this type of quality from, say, an all-in-one printer when you're going straight from your camera, because it's the camera, there's no intermediate, say, computer in between. But there's a lot of things that customers need to remember, that the quality of the image isn't just, oh, it looks good on the screen on the back of my camera, so how come it doesn't look like that on the print? Could be a lot of reasons. It could be the color setup in the computer. It could be the settings that they've got their digital camera set at are great for looking at it on your computer screen, but when you transfer that to a printed page, it doesn't translate. If possible, if you're printing from your computer, make sure that your monitor is calibrated. One of the biggest complaints I get from customers is, oh, it looks great on my monitor, but it prints, some sort of color cast when it goes to the printer. The printer doesn't have any intelligence whatsoever. It just prints whatever the computer tells it to print. So the assumption in that case is that the printer is printing a cast because it's being told to. The monitor looks good, but in reality it's not color balanced properly, and if it was, it would show that cast as well. And the second sort of link in the chain is to make sure that the color management in the computer is set up properly, and that's probably the single biggest problem, that the people using a printer don't understand or don't tell the printer exactly what they want to happen. They kind of put a bunch of different things in, or they don't. They may not even check off the if they want the color management to be on or off, because it's all in the driver. They just have to click a button and either it's on or it's off.
I think that's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.